All right, so today we are going to talk about how to decompose fractions as a sum of unit fractions. So as a reminder, a fraction means equal parts of a whole. So any whole number can be broken up into any number of equal parts. To start out today's lesson, we're going to start with the number 1. And we're going to decompose this as a sum of unit fractions dealing with fourths. So in one whole, if we're breaking it into fourths, there would be 4 equal parts. We would decompose it as 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. So altogether, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 4/4. And we know that when we have the same number of parts as there are in the whole, that would equal our one whole. Now we can decompose this in different ways. We can start with that same whole, number 1. And let's say I want to decompose it into just 2 parts, but I'm still dealing with fourths. I can break those 4/4 up into 2/4 plus 2/4, and that would still equal one whole, because the 2/4 plus the 2/4 equals 1/4. I can break it up a different way. Let's say I started with 3/4. The other part of that would be 1/4. And again, 3/4 plus 1/4 would add up to 4/4, which would equal one whole. All right, in this example, I'm using a tape diagram as opposed to a number bond. And I'm looking at this fraction 7/8, and I want to decompose that into a sum of smaller fractions or unit fractions. And before I can get started, I want to go ahead and shade in what that fraction looks like in my tape diagram. I'm going to shade in 7 of these 8 equal parts to represent my 7/8. Now I can decompose this as a sum of unit fractions, where it would be 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8, and that would all add up to 7/8. I can decompose this in different ways by grouping some of these together. Let's say I wanted to put parentheses there and there. I can write those 2 fractions. My first parentheses represents 2/8. My second set of parentheses represents 5/8. Together, my 2/8 plus my 5/8 adds up to 7/8. I could break this apart into even smaller categories if I wanted to. Let's say I wanted to group those together, and those together. I would write that addition sentence as 2/8 plus 2/8 plus 3/8. And together those would all add up to our original fraction, 7/8. Now I want you to think about some other combination of how you can decompose this fraction with either 2 addends or 3 addends. This last example is a little bit different because I'm starting out with a fraction that is greater than 1. Here I have 5/4. So one whole would only be 4/4. So this fraction is bigger than one whole. In my tape diagram, I'm still going to draw 1 bar, but the first thing I'm going to do is draw a marker here to indicate that this is my one whole. I can break up the fraction 5/4 as a sum of unit fractions as 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. And I can decompose this in different ways. I can decompose it so I have those fractions all together, which would be 4/4 plus 1/4. And another way of writing that would be simply 1 whole plus 1/4. That would add up to our 5/4. I can decompose it by shading in those 2. I I can pick 2 more. And finally a third one. That I would represent as 2/4 plus 2/4 plus 1/4. Again, that would all add up to 5/4. So I want you to think about a different way that you can decompose the fraction 5/4. What other number bond combinations can you come up with?